I think the big learning was out of the gate is teach your users how to use your product, like overly teach them how to use your product and enable them to teach others how to use your product, because then they're going to feel all like evangelists and advocates.
Hey, this is Jesse here, and you're about to hear my discussion with Adam from HandiGraphs, which is baseball handicapping made easy. In this one, Adam explains how HandiGraphs is making baseball statistics more visual and actionable, why he believes that storytelling is such a critical part of generating initial traction for startups, his experience helping companies like Outlier, Rhythm, and Picket develop their PR and communication strategies, the personal and business benefits he's seen hosting his own podcast, and why he chooses to live by a philosophy of being helpful. Adam is truly one of the good people in this space, and it was a ton of fun hearing him tell the HandiGraphs story. The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. 4 out of the top 5 US operators personalize player experiences with Optimove. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/bettingstartups. And if you like what you see, you'll get your first month free. All right, we are back here on the Betting Startups podcast. For people watching this one on YouTube, you might see me wearing a shirt that I don't normally wear this late into October. That's because the Blue Jays punched their ticket the other day to the World Series, which starts in 48 hours from this recording. And I thought it'd be really cool to invite a friend this week, given the importance of this week for most Canadians and certainly all Blue Jays fans. I thought I'd invite a friend of mine from the industry who is building something around baseball. Thought that would be very fitting. So without further delay, Adam Rosenberg, welcome to the podcast. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing really well. Very happy to be here on my first time. And also go Jays. Very much go Jays. And I'm saying that as a Phillies fan who lived through the 1993 Joe Carter stuff. The Jays cashed a very big ticket for me. Like I told you before we jumped on, I am eagerly trying to find a George Springer jersey, and I'm all in on you guys. So congrats.
All right, well, let's go, man. We have our work cut out for us. I haven't quite confronted the reality that we're facing the Dodgers here, still kind of riding high off the wind, but I think reality will set it for me this afternoon once I start to look ahead at the pitching matchups for the series and all of that. Before we shift, Adam, let's just stick with baseball for a minute, because as I said, not only are you building in and around baseball, but I mean, baseball is a huge passion of yours. You have a podcast talking about baseball. Give us a quick World Series preview from your perspective. I mean, what do you expect to see play out here? Obviously, the Dodgers fairly heavily favored, expectedly, but Blue Jays aren't to be counted out as we've seen here. What do you expect to see go down over the next 7 games or less?
So it's a tale of two different teams, because the Jays were pretty consistently good. I think everyone just waited for them to fall apart, and they never really fell apart. The Yankees got close, but it's a very well-run team, and no one strikes out, and they are young and exciting, and I think they have a pretty solid mix of pitchers. And then the Dodgers, who effectively load managed for the entire year, which I know is something that's commonly used in the NBA, but the Dodgers really didn't start playing until about a week before September, and they have all their pitchers that are on low innings limits. So, I do think in playoff baseball, I always will lean towards the side that has a stronger starting pitching. And I do think that ultimately the Dodgers will come out of this because of those benefits that they've had on starting pitching. But I'm really glad it's these two teams. Yeah. And I think it's, the Jays went down 2-0 in the ALCS and didn't quit. And I think I think historically teams that are up 2-0 have an 82% chance or something like that of winning ALCS. That didn't matter to the Blue Jays team. So I don't have liability on either side. I want the Jays to win. I think that the Jays can keep this competitive. And I will always remind people that this Dodgers team, if you're looking for a flaw, this is the oldest team in the majors. That's why they break down a lot. There's going to be a lot of travel, a lot of planes. This Jays team is not the oldest team in the majors. They got a lot of young guys. So this is good. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited for it. One last baseball series.
I just hope your Springer jersey shows up before the series concludes. I could probably use a new jersey myself. Luckily, the technology isn't there yet for us to smell each other through remote recordings like this, but I haven't washed this jersey since the playoffs started. I've been wearing it every game. There is food all over it, kid handprints all over it. It's a mess. Luckily, that's not an issue here now. Adam, let's get into things here. You wear a number of different hats, as I alluded to. You have your own podcast talking about baseball. I definitely want to spend a few minutes on that. You are very well known, probably best known, I would say, within the industry context for the marketing and PR and comms services you provide to so many different companies in this space, particularly, a lot of the most promising growth stage companies in the space, many of which have been guests on this podcast previously. As if that wasn't enough, you this year have actually co-founded your own company. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff, but just to tee it up as we always do, let's hear from you. Give us a bit of a rundown on the Adam Rosenberg story, some of the major chapters of your journey prior to, sitting here and now with me.
I'll give you the quick version. So I started in politics and I was a fundraiser and moved from that PR and was an early adopter on social and found my way doing like social media strategy for some B2B companies and some video game companies and spent some time at Clorox and learned about brand strategy. So my career from a marketing perspective was sort of touching all the different vectors that you need. And then the last 5 years since the pandemic, I got very into sports betting, just like everyone else did while they were sitting at home. And I found a way into the industry through a number of different sports media companies and have always had a passion for baseball in the background. And as I got more involved in betting and doing my own PR services for a lot of startups, I would meet different startups in betting that worked adjacently with sports betting. So a lot of insight platforms, AI tools, all the different things that I know from tech and from brand, but they're actually just working specifically within this industry. And as I got more into the betting side, I met a friend of mine, my co-founder, CJ Buskey, who we met actually in the Discord for Outlier. So we always joke with Evan from there that he has incubator shares of HandiGraphs. And he said to me, every night I was always going on Fangraphs and I was always listing out pitchers because baseball's always been my favorite sport to bet along with hockey. And I would put together the lists overnight, and he said of who the starting pitchers were, and I'd share them, and I'd say, hey, here's their hard hit rate. He said, I can make a website that works for this. And he made one, and we soft launched it for about 4 months with a Discord community that we have. Everyone loved it, and then we launched it publicly in July, and people loved it. So I was able to really wear these multiple hats of guy who actually bets on the sport that he's advising companies who are talking to other people about how to use their products to bet on the sport. So I was able to help people, tell their story and then develop my own product story, which is really neat because I'd never learned about subscribers and user cycles and churn. And I had just never done that. And now I think one of the things that's made myself and HandiGraphs successful has been knowing from my PR end that the goal is always to tell a story that is, if you're a company, you exist because you're solving a problem and what you're doing for someone else. And so out of the gate, we were able to articulate that really well for HandiGraphs. And that was, we wanted to make a website that made it easier for people to bet on a sport that would be very intimidating to them and know what data is good and what data is bad. Because you can go anywhere and you can see 7 out of the last 10 times it's happened, et cetera, et cetera. But on HandiGraphs, you go in and blue is bad and red is good. And so most of our users are people that have never bet the sport before, and they come away saying, oh my God, I now know why it was 7 out of 10 because of this. So it's a fun journey. I know that was a little long-winded, but again, like I say in baseball, touch them all. So I try to touch all the bases on that one.
Let's stick with HandiGraphs for a few minutes here, Adam. As you said, launched in July. I saw you in August briefly in Vegas at Bet Bash. And I remember, we said a quick hello, but you got up, said hi, and then sat right back down to your laptop. We were sitting, obviously, at the sportsbook in Circa, and you were sitting there using your own product, basically looking at the day's slate. I think there was some games up on the TV in the book. So, you are your own first user. Talk just about the process of developing the product with CJ and, that problem that you talked about that you're seeking to solve that might be a bit of a unmet need out there. And look, you found a bit of a wedge here. Just talk a bit about, taking that idea from 0 to 1 with CJ.
So the biggest thing was, we identified what we thought were the most important pieces of data that someone needed to be able to cap baseball. And we started with baseball because we wanted to find sports that people were intimidated to bet. People are intimidated to bet baseball because they just don't know one side or the other. They don't know, should I be looking at batting average? Is this batting average good? What is a BABIP? So we really leaned into a platform that enabled people to become better bettors because they could customize as they pleased. And we knew we wanted to add things like the ability to export because you could everyone's using chat and different AI tools. So you can export data from HandiGraphs. You could put in a ChatGPT and say, hey, here's all this data that I have. What are the best recommendations? We also saw that there was a gap on a specific data set within baseball, that being 30, 60, 90 plate appearances. Most people, when you see any sport, will say, this is how a guy has been over the last 7 games or 2 weeks. And in baseball, you never see you see it on TV, you never see it in betting, his last 30 or 60 plate appearances. That can span against a specific pitcher's handedness. That could span a couple games. That could span a couple weeks. If you didn't see a left-hander for the last 3 weeks, but every time you saw them, you hit them, it's going to give you a different result than it is if I said, oh, this is what you're batting over the last 2 weeks. So we really made our own proprietary metric in it that we thought and ended up proving gave a legitimate edge when it came to sports betting. So we just leaned into that, and that kind of became our secret sauce, is that use our product. We have a dashboard and a UX that made things very easy, because a lot of times what we find in the industry is that there's a lot of data and a lot of things that are put out there, and you never realize, oh, users can't find their way around this. CJ really nailed the UX on this and the user experience, and that allowed us to really sell this feature of it, which is being able to have a specific pitcher handedness on both sides, like pitchers versus batter and batter versus pitcher, that you could get micro and what we call like true form of a batter or a pitcher. So doing that, we lose CLV, but then we win bets. And so we're basically been able to prove that, wow, we have an edge on how some of these are being created. And it's been a lot of fun. And, we're adding a lot more. We're adding hockey in a couple of weeks. And the goal is to add tennis and golf. Again, these are all sports that people would want to bet, but they don't know how to. And baseball is always going to be the heart product. And so we have a whole bunch of other things we're going to be adding in the spring for that as well.
Through the first few months, it sounds like you have a pretty loyal, engaged initial audience, right? You always want to find your 1,000 true fans or whatever it is, and get those early adopters who are going to be your evangelists. Talk about some of the feedback you're getting from them, right? I mean, you mentioned there's areas where the tool is revealing an edge in some of the baseball markets. But what's the feedback you're hearing from your initial users? What's vibing for them? What have you learned in terms of things that you maybe need to work on or focus on? Give us a bit of a sense of just the feedback and the adoption so far.
So we learned right away that you really need, and this really goes, I feel like, for all new products, you really need to hold people's hands out of the gate as new users, because if a user has a really good experience in their first 2 weeks with a product, they're with you forever. It's harder if they have a bad experience to win them back. And out of the gate, we had a lot of people who said, I love this, I just don't know how exactly to use it yet. And so then I just stayed up all night and I just started churning out videos that were based on different markets. And we created a learn section that said, hey, here's what these different stats are. And here's the corresponding betting markets where we think that matters. And we also really wanted to focus, and this is because I work with a lot of these companies, like when I work with the Outliers of the world, like the Hall of Fame Bets of the world, the Rhythms and things of the world, I didn't want to compete with any of them. I wanted to be something that everybody could kind of use with other products. And, that was a big thing for us was, hey, why would I use you versus an outlier, use it like versus Rhythm? I said, well, you use us as raw data and you use them to kind of analyze for you. And so we're giving you a thing to analyze yourself. But we discovered with users that education tools, which I kind of want to give a shout out to BetSmart on your side, is just educational tools and people understanding how to use products can't be done enough. Because new users, they would do requests and they would say, hey, can you show us what the best way is to identify someone who hits a single, or tell us how the best way to find somebody who hits 2 hits. And we started getting users that were making their own filter. We have a filter section in the site where you can say, hey, every time I come here, these are the 5 stats that are most important to me for pitcher view or whatever you want to do, or how I know stats for a guy who might hit a home run. We started doing that. We made it so you could save them and people started sharing their own. So it was almost like we had our own community of we enabled our community to share, hey, what are the filters you're using for 2 hits? And so people would help each other out. And I think the big learning was out of the gate is teach your users how to use your product, like overly teach them how to use your product, and enable them to teach others how to use your product, because then they're going to feel all like evangelists and advocates. And that is something that is really important for brand, because we have 0 churn. So we're not a crazy expensive product, and obviously baseball's sort of winding down, but we had everybody sign up for a season, which was to the end of the year pass. And we had, I think, 1% of our users, of the 250 users paid users that we had, were month to month. And our engagement rate, like our page views on it, we have upwards of 500,000 views, because people are just leaving the site up, going constantly, refreshing, looking at for things. And so it's sticky. And finding stickiness and teaching your users on how to use your product just creates an army of advocates.
And I want to ask as well, just from a go-to-market perspective, in terms of how you've packaged up and ultimately delivering the product. It's subscription-based. I think it's whatever, $10 a month, right? So like the price of a cup of coffee these days, maybe 2 cups of coffee. But just talk a bit about kind of how you guys thought about the pricing model, making it subscription versus free, and just sort of that entire journey of how do you actually monetize a product like this?
CJ's day job is he's a Salesforce engineer. And so he's really in the weeds on some of the tech stuff and some of the products. And mine is obviously as a PR consultant. So I come from the how's everybody telling their story, and he comes from, well, how do users work? But neither one of us had marketed a product, a go-to-market like this. So we sort of trial and error, but we had the product out starting by opening day this year. And we took 3 months and we gave it to everybody for free. And we just said, here, use it. Tell us what you like. We took a lot of feedback. We organized feedback. One of my jobs as being a business partner and co-founder with CJ and CJ being the tech and the coder, is I need to protect CJ from everybody asking him for build this, and what helps. And he's really great at it. He's a great partner on the whole thing, and was able to take a lot of the feedback that we were getting. But we gave it to people for the first 3 months, and we gave it for free. And we gave a heads up of, hey, we're going to do it. This is when we're going to do this. And the way we structured our cost, we didn't think it was going to take off. So we structured our costs around it, corresponding with our podcast to how much our producer cost. And so we thought, okay, if we get half these number of users, we've paid for our producer to do our show for the rest of the season. And then it came out and it blew up. And you guys wrote about it. And we got some other coverage all over the place. And just the feedback was really good. We had a lot of people a lot of betting syndicates that said, hey, we use this and we export it and we're using it for our own models. Like, this is great. And then we decided, well, we got to figure out like a business plan and figure out what we want to do with this. So we started figuring out what our pricing model is that's built around, how much of it is kind of proof of concept, balancing proof of concept with how much realistically is this going to cost the person that is using our product. Like, our product is built for someone who is both a $25 better to a $500,000 better, because we've seen all of them use it. And we made it priced wise enough that you could win the amount that it costs for the month if you're using it correctly within 3 days. Variance happens, but since everything's based off raw data, we feel like we've lowered a variance edge within the betting side. So a lot of it was kind of testing. We haven't gotten any feedback that things were too expensive. And all we've heard from people is, I think that 3 months where we kind of gave it as like a trial run to everybody felt, hey, we're willing to kind of support this. And that was really nice. It's a nice little pat on the back from everybody.
Yeah, such a great story, Adam. How are you and CJ thinking about this right now? Is this a side project? Are you guys being a bit cautious about calling this a business that you're all in on? Just like, what's the mental model right now about like what this is? And I guess what are the ultimate aspirations for the project?
We're kind of running with it. I mean, we have a bank account for it. We have everything. So it's neat. Like I've started to set it up as the podcast that we have is now a true marketing vehicle for the product. So when we do our podcast, we have a segment where we show people the podcast is free. And, Dad's Bet Baseball and football, because it's football season too. And we will show people how to use the product. We'll highlight something. And so that was another thing that we started doing, is that every week on the podcast, we would have a HandiGraphs section where we'd show people, hey, here's how you do it. Okay, cool. We're going to talk about baseball now. The way that we're looking at it is growing it as a legitimate business. And part of that is adding, we've talked to folks, Rick Alec from Odds Logic and Wager Talk gave us some really, really good advice. And it's kind of been a pseudo advisor for us. And, he mentioned the importance of, you're going to have users that are just going to not want to search, that are just going to want to have an automated version of like, well, what's the best? So we're going to create a way to have a one pager so that somebody can, just go to the site and immediately be able to say, okay, cool. Well, this is the top stuff of the day. It's sort of similar to when you see in any football rankings, these are the people that pop to the top. So we're adding sports. We're looking at it as more than a side project, but not quite yet a full-time job. I think next baseball season is going to be pretty key for us, because we'll have hit rates. We'll also have a full season. We have, unlike anyone else, we have postseason stats that are live that are put in there. So a lot of other sites, when you're looking at them during the postseason, everything ends at the regular season, or it's really hard to find what's going on there. We have all that. We're going to have stuff for spring training. So people will have the ability to be super degenerate, I guess, if you really want to go into that. But we're kind of growing this, and the eventual goal is to raise and do things like that. I think right now we're finishing up the proof of concept year, and then we kind of get into we're sort of between proof of concept and alpha phase right now.
Sounds like you guys are well on your way. I just love the fact that you're building this organically. I mean, it's really much born out of being a passion project and your love for baseball, but very quickly, even a few months into this thing, very clear you have a bit of a trajectory here. So super excited to see how it develops and ultimately where you get to over the next year as we get back to spring training. In the meantime, as you just alluded to, you also have a podcast with CJ, Dad's Bet Baseball. Anytime I get a chance to chat with somebody else that also podcasts, I'd be remiss to not spend a couple minutes on that. What's your experience with podcasting insofar of like what it's unlocked for you, right? I mean, you did allude to the fact that, maybe now it's a bit of a marketing channel potentially for the HandiGraphs product, but before HandiGraphs existed, you were still doing the pod. Like, talk a bit about just kind of like what it's unlocked for you, if anything. And everybody's experience is different. So I just love capturing data points and anecdotes from other people that are doing it.
Surprise, surprise, my wife does not enjoy hearing as much about sports and baseball and sports betting as much as my friends and podcast guests do. And so one of the key reasons why I enjoy it is because I get to spend an hour to 2 hours a week talking about stuff that I love with people whose opinions I respect. I almost get to lab and think through things. And, one of the things that we try to do on our show, it's not a betting industry show and it's not a betting pick show, but what we try to do is everybody comes away with, well, what's a market or a future? We kind of focus a lot on futures and because it's a lot of fun. Because then anyone who listens feels like, oh, we heard that, at 300 to 1 months ago. So now we're kind of all in on it together. And I have a lot of fun with that. And doing that allows me also to merge what I read about is going on in the world and in the market with someone, CJ, my co-host, like he doesn't work in the industry or do things like us. So he comes from it from a totally different end. And I can understand like, well, here's what someone who is not reading everybody, reading SBC or reading EGR and reading things like that all day can talk about with betting. So it's fun. And the thing is that, we're now at a point, and I say this to everybody who wants to do content for a living. It's not something I downplay, but there's a supply demand curve. So you have to, and the supply is way out of whack. There's tons of supply. There's never enough demand. And so you really have to be okay with enjoying what you are creating and what you are doing on your podcast. If you're not going to listen to your own podcast, then there isn't a point to doing it because you can't take for granted that you're going to think that everybody's going to find it because there's just so much out there. And, there are 5 podcasts that I listen to. I listen to like yours and 3 SGPN podcasts and then a comedy podcast. And I listen to like Comedy Bang Bang and like, that's it. And the thing is that you just have to be able to, you have to be okay with constantly kind of making time for it. And this is kind of going to be this is going to be what you're doing tonight for a couple hours. And instead of, I never got to watch like Succession and I never got to watch I think everyone, what is it? Task. Everyone's really excited about now. A lot of these shows I never get to watch because I'm researching for the podcast, but it's given me a really good outlet again, to talk about the things that I really enjoy. It's worked as a really good marketing vehicle. And it also just allows me once or twice a week to truly brainstorm with somebody on things I might want to bet, ideas I might want to have, innovation stuff. And I think that is the ultimate value of it is when you bring in guests and things and you're doing a podcast, you start to walk away with, man, my good friend Sean on a couple times, he does a lot of stuff with Knicks basketball. And I always walk away thinking, oh man, that's a really, really good idea, a really good take. And that's what makes it a lot of fun. I'm sure like with the guests that you have, you walk away being like, that was really interesting. Like I wouldn't have thought of that because I wouldn't have talked to that person.
I mean, I literally walk away from every episode, and this is cliche sounding, but I always learn something new, right? Doesn't matter if it's a big thing, a small thing. And, through the repetition of doing whatever, 185-ish of these at this point, like I'm learning a ton, right? So it's a super cool, almost Trojan horse to me to kind of get into the minds of smart people doing cool things. The other thing, Adam, I want to spend a couple minutes on, as I've referenced, you do a lot of PR and comms and provide a lot of support, honestly, in a number of different ways. But what I really want to spend a minute on here is the support you provide to a lot of the earlier stage and growth stage companies in this space. I mean, you name checked a few: Outlier, Rhythm, Hall of Fame Bets. I'm probably missing a bunch there. Apologies if so. But look, you get to work with a lot of these founders that are on growth trajectories of their own building in this space. And, you get to coach them in many ways on strategies and tactics to really maximize the impact and the reach of the messages that they're trying to get out into the market. So I want to sort of tap into your mind here for a minute and do a bit of experience and knowledge sharing, frankly, with our audience, many of which are founders trying to do the same thing. What's some of your best, just like general advice or guidance for helping earlier stage companies just get discovered, right? You want to talk top of funnel, just that broad awareness. Like, what are some things people can be doing tactically to really just drive awareness at the very early stages of their journeys?
So the first thing I just tell everybody to do is get your story straight. And whether that's me working with you on it or whether it's doing it yourself, if you are able to describe to everybody what it is you're doing, what you are solving, and what is the value, you can put that into any sort of medium and any sort of material whatsoever. And there are a lot of companies that sort of describe themselves in terms of other companies. And that's what you don't want to do. You don't want to say, we are the Uber of whatever, because while that makes it easy and that might be great for an investment deck and for pitching, it's not great when you are trying to build your own brand awareness because you want to have something that's really unique. You don't want to have to describe, if you're saying you're the DoorDash of betting. So, okay, so you are the on-demand version of betting. Like, say that. Just say, don't say that you are some other company. I think that getting those stories straight is really important, and understanding that in the world of how important search and what people are actually reading, AI has really given a lot of value to organic write-ups that people will do. That's why your newsletter is really great, because it's one of these really easy to read things that comes out, and you can kind of see like, oh, what's hot, like who's kind of raising money, like what's going on. If that was done by just AI slop, it's not going to register on any Google. Nothing like that's going to happen. If you go to like Google searches now, a lot of things are quotes, a lot of things are interviews. If you are looking at things and trying to talk to more media people like yourself, I think that that's really important for early stage, because you start to be known as, oh, well, either this company does this, or, hey, that guy knows a lot about Y, or knows, and it's about having either something that makes you very special or a POV that is very unique and very valuable, because that eventually gets everything out there. That also leads to business, that leads to partnerships. And that is something that a lot of companies take for granted because they're very focused on, well, I'm just going to do ads and get users. But users and bettors and people are smart now to the point where they can see through if something is valuable to them. If you just say, use my product, you'll win, people are going to say, why, how? And you can't say why we're different than everything else out there. There's no reason that people have to stick around. And so I just constantly tell people, just get your stories straight, say why you're important, what's your elevator pitch, what's your 40,000 elevator pitch if you want a very, very long elevator ride, and really crystallize what it is that you do that's different than everybody else.
You're working with some of the fastest growing companies in the space right now. Any other alpha you can dispense on the audience here as it relates to marketing, comms, PR, positioning, go-to-market strategy, anything else you've learned through either HandiGraphs or your day job that you can leave us with here?
So on Ted Lasso, he always says, be curious. I like to say, be helpful. It's the same kind of thing. And you know this because you alluded to it. I worked in politics, and one of the things in politics was kind of networking and doing those things. And while politics was a lot about, oh, who do you work for? As I've gotten older, it's more about, I've built my network. I'd rather just share it with people and be helpful. Whenever you're talking to other companies, I think when people start to worry about this company's competing with me, or everybody's competing with everybody. You have to use that as a baseline blanket. Whatever you're doing, we're all competing with each other. But if everyone just does try to go into every meeting, every conversation with how can I be helpful, or ask that question, I think that what it does is it really disarms everyone and allows everybody to kind of move their own balls forward. So I try to just do that. I try to say, listen to Ted Lasso, be curious, but be helpful. And there's a lot of times where you'll have a conversation, you'll say, this is not totally helpful, and be able to say, like, this isn't helpful. And I think the big thing that comes out of being helpful is you start to understand what is worth your time. And I say this to everybody, but time is the only resource you can never get back. And whether you're building, whether you're talking about a product, or whether you are selling a product, that is, if you're not using your time efficiently, you're not going to get it back and you've wasted it. So be helpful is kind of the big advice that I would give to everybody.
When I think of people in this industry that are genuinely helpful people, like your name comes up like front of mind for me right away without a second thought. You embody that, right? I mean, I feel like barely a week goes by where you have a post on LinkedIn, my network is your network. You're giving a lot. And I love that you said that, because I think if you can offer something of value and give without any expectation of anything in return, more often than not, that's actually how you get people asking how they can help you.
It's worked. It's honestly, I think it's also just because if you name it, I've gone through it in my life. Like, I got divorced at 27, I have lost like 3 jobs over the pandemic, because like that's how the world that we live in is, that things happen. And I always say to everybody, I will constantly, and there are a lot of people who say I do not have time to do meetings and stuff with everyone. I will 100% make time to have a 20-minute phone call with anybody who's laid off or having a thing. The only thing I always say to you is I will probably have to reschedule it 3 times because I have 2 young kids, and it's just, that is the world. You get it. That is just the world. And as long as you are cool with that, know that I am not a flake. My kids are. So, but yeah, I appreciate that, man. That's honestly like I live, it has burned me. And I'm sure, cause like I find you, like how you describe me is how I describe you towards all the startups and everybody working in the space, is that you kind of put it all out there that you're, I know this is like, we're just glazing each other on. That's what the kids say. They call it glazing on this podcast, but you know, you do the same thing. And I'm sure like, you know, we both gotten burned on it, but it's just, it's a lot easier to just say it, to assume what's good for you is ultimately good for me. And as you get older, you kind of see through the BS. And so, yeah, I just try to be helpful. That's really what it comes down to.
Love it, man. We're getting to the home stretch here. I always wrap up my episodes, Adam, with a few rapid fire questions. I'm going to hit you with a few of the standard ones, but I got a couple I'm going to pull off the shelf here for you in particular here. But let's just start with the routine ones. You get up in the morning, grab your phone. What's the first app you're opening up?
First app I'm opening up is my email, because I have everything done in newsletter form in there.
All right. You're at the karaoke lounge later, assuming you didn't have 2 kids and all these other things that occupy your time. Assuming you're at the karaoke lounge, what song are you singing?
Bust a Move, Young MC. I have that one teed up. I have a list of my core karaoke songs, and that is one of them.
And if you could be somebody else, dead or alive, for one day only, who would that be?
That's a great question. Probably Jim Morrison or Jerry Garcia. I just, you know, I like, obviously you can tell I got a Fish poster behind me. I'm pretty much into that music. I'd love to kind of know what it was like kind of making music and touring around when there really weren't any rules. I would absolutely want to deal with that. As someone who used to be in a band, that's probably what I would deal with. I know people probably expect something more intelligent than that, but that's what I'm going with, creative side.
I know we've bonded in the past over our shared love of the boss, Bruce Springsteen. I got to see him for the first time last year. You shared with me, you've seen him, I don't know how many different times. My question for you in the quick hit, what's your go-to Bruce Springsteen tune?
Oh, Atlantic City. Like Born to Run fires me up. Don't get me wrong. But it's funny because I feel like I've seen 3 different last tours of Bruce Springsteen, and he's just, you know, it's like The Rising was his like 3rd Renaissance. And I got to see him do that live in New Orleans, like after Katrina. Like it was great. So, and after 9/11. So I like some old Bruce Springsteen. Obviously I haven't seen the movie yet, so I'm kind of stoked for that.
Yeah, likewise. And then final one here to bring this whole conversation full circle, coming back to where we started, which is the impending start of the World Series here. Who do you got for World Series MVP?
Bo Bichette at 35-1. He's got the same, I like the narrative on it. I mean, this is, you know, I always caution of like, hey, if you don't have liability on side, I think Bo Bichette was going to lead the league in hits and was having a monster year until he had this knee injury. He says he's back. If he is back, he has the Freddie Freeman narrative that Freddie had last year. And if he's back, he is an on-base machine. 35-1 is crazy for the cleanup hitter.
All right, my man. I hope you cash that ticket. For now, Adam, quickly tell folks listening where they can go to check out HandiGraphs and best ways to get in touch with you for anything that might have piqued their interest in this conversation today.
So my ex is, what's the same on all platforms, at Hey Rosenberg, and HandiGraphs is at HandiGraphs, handigraphs.com. Dad's Bet Baseball. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, all the places you find podcasts. It's on YouTube, all those things. I know that the kids watch shows, and if you're over 30, you listen to a show. But, you know, if you want to listen, give it a listen. And I always say, but like my DMs are open. For better or worse, I reply to all of them. So if you want to drop me a line, if you want to find time to brainstorm, always happy to do that. And just want to be helpful and have other people pay it forward. So
one of the best people in this space and now a founder to boot. Adam, thanks for joining, man. Really wishing you all the best with HandiGraphs, and go Jays.
Yeah, thanks.
The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. 4 out of the top 5 US operators personalize player experiences with Optimove. Learn more about Optimove by requesting a demo at optimove.com/bettingstartups. And if you like what you see, you'll get your first month free.